Well, hello everyone and welcome back to Lap of the World and to just the laps of Pineview Run Auto and Country Club. This video is mainly intended to show some reference laps for help learning the track before you might go and drive it yourself, although we might have a little fun along the way with some interesting car comparisons. Just to be very clear, there is no quote-unquote racing in this video. This was an open track event facilitated by S2K Takeover. Any passing was done via an acknowledged point buy. If you'd like to learn more about Pineview Run, please check out our track feature video, and if you'd like to support Lap of the World, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing, and check out some of our other links in the description to our Patreon and merch shop. As we pull up to pit out, I want to make sure that the severity of the elevation change we're going to see here isn't lost in the effects of wide-angle lenses. If you know how to read a topographical map, this one should give you an indication of the scale of the ups and downs involved with turning laps here. With that context, let's head out for the start of what was my third session on a still drying track surface after some heavy rain over the preceding 48 hours. As we get released down the fairly short pit out road, we'll start this right off with a pro tip. You're going to want to stay full track left until you're most of the way around the first turn here. That is to give anyone coming in hot through turn 1 the opportunity to miss you, should there have been an unsafe release. That said, the team at Pineview Run, they know their track well. And I don't think we saw a single, even remotely close call on pit out the entire weekend, but better safe than sorry. So again, as you pit out and enter the track, stay full track left around the first turn. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna talk through kind of some laps of the track to get the lay of the land. I figured we would start out with this, more video game-ish hood view from the windshield, as this is going to give you a little bit more clean field of view to what the shape of the track looks like and where points of interest may fall. Then we will move on in our second session to a closer to POV view to kind of dial in more realistic sight lines. But we're going to come up here and kind of complete our first short lap, and we're going to skip ahead just one lap here real quick. Because we kind of get into a little bit more of an interesting situation. As you can see, your exit line out of that last turn almost takes you into the pit in, which again is a very short entry, so you want to signal that well in advance. But we start our lap of Pineview Run. We are coming here through turn 1, which in the dry would be flat, I think, and would probably push you a little further to the right. We'll see that later. All these turns, you kind of turn 2 there is going to be a late apex, and you're going to be careful clipping on 3 and 4. I hear there is another layer of pavement that is in the works at some point in the future on Pineview. Right now there is a little lip on the bottom of those concrete curbs, so if you have, particularly if you run shorter sidewalls, you're not going to want to touch those too much. But I think what we're going to see here as far as this first session is an interesting illustration of it's an interesting tire comparison, I guess is what I would call it. As you can see, we're kind of coming into contact with this C5 Z06 Corvette up here in front of us. Now normally I would expect a C5 Z06 to probably show its heels to our NSX just based on horsepower, and typically they run a much wider tire from factory on those, so they tend to have the mechanical grip advantage as well as the horsepower and torque advantage. But here where handling is at a premium, I know for a fact this gentleman who may have jokingly accused me of picking on him a little bit, but it's only because he was on, he had just bought the car and was on tires that were, I don't know how old, but they were they were like all seasons and old, and he was like, well, nobody's going to buy these, it's not safe to sell them to anybody, so I may as well go and send them off in style. So he came out and did a couple of track events. As you can see, I'm right there struggling for grip. But that's the difference between like cars of similar weight. He's got me probably by, I'm going to say 50 horsepower, probably at least. And then, but I have some basically brand new at this point Falcon RT660s, which are on the stickier side of the 200 treadwear street tire game right now, versus whatever El Cheapo run flat whatever that's on that car. And you can see he's anywhere that he's putting his foot down, it's just all over the place. And the the compound on the Falcons that I'm running here is kind of trumping the even the wet conditions. As you can see, it was a kind of entertaining shot. He's just squirreling all over the place. I'm flat throttle over that brow, no problem. Into the fine little autocross section here, which again looks very unspectacular from outside of the car, but was pretty intense inside the car. With a friendly point by and a friendly wave to acknowledge we're on our way again. So again, turn 1 could be flat. Coming in here to turn 2, you're going to want to skip this first apex, hit the second apex, which I'm off of a little bit, although it's a later apex than you think, especially in the wet. Clip here, stay track right, and then dial it in there, although your priority should be on getting this turn right, because it leads to this downhill straight. And you want to make sure as you kind of land the car after that, you have your wheels pointed mostly straight, especially as you pick up speed. Down here to the bottom of the boot and starting up the S's, I think I was probably not being as enthusiastic as I could have been up these hills, just on account of the slope kind of helping you from, you know, not breaking traction. But again, this is, you know, got to drive the car home, not trying to do too much crazy. This was a fun one. This is what they think they called, what are they calling this track section? They're calling it the knuckle. And it's the fastest turn on the track, I think, as far as any kind of steady state. Into the blind hairpin down here and back over the crest where you saw the Corvette getting squirrely earlier. Again, doesn't look like much on the camera with a wide angle, but it is a very distinct crest. And in any car with horsepower, or rather, car with lots of torque, you'd want to make sure you're pointed straight over there. Back around for another lap here as we kind of start to pick up speed. That was our quickest lap in this session. Let's see if we can hit any more highlights as we continue to go through here and drive around. I think one more lap in this session. You can make note, I think this is probably a good thing. If you go there, you know, it does tend to rain certain times a year in upstate New York. It is not an arid climate by any stretch, so I think it was interesting to note where all of the standing water can accrue on this track. It has pretty good drainage, but there was a lot of rain on the previous day, and there were definitely a couple of places where, you know, the track kind of is on camber, but then has a curb on the inside that was kind of retaining water a little bit. And then other places, just you can see that just there to the right, offline, where water would kind of tend to stand a little bit. As we come through the knuckle again, carrying as much speed as we can to get this late apex exit after missing the first two apexes. You can see again a little bit of standing water that would gather here on this blind hairpin. It's mostly dried out by this point in the day, but there was an actual legit puddle there earlier. And then coming through this section, the first turn was all right. The second turn, there was definitely a puddle in the apex here, and earlier in the day you could have a little fun there, and really even in with Honda torque, you could get your car to rotate through there on the throttle while kind of splashing some of the water out of the way and helping the cause of drying the track. The biggest ones were at turn 1 right there, and then I think as you saw earlier, as we're coming down here through turn, I guess this is turn 3 into 4, technically speaking, which where we were really having to kind of make sure we avoided that. But again, that's kind of a sightseeing session there to get the lay of the land, so let's move on to a little bit quicker session in the dry. We are going to get right down to business in this second session, as the second lap I turned ended up being my quickest on the weekend. You know, before the tires started to go off. Now, the track was dry and I was able to really give them a workout. So again, we're going to start here on the front straight, pour the car into turn 1, keeping a tight line, and then tracking it out to clip onto turn 2. And then we're going to kind of keep it mid-track, maybe coming out and back in just a little bit on the exit to 2 to clip onto 3 before we get a tight line around 4 and over the crest on 5. Again, you want to have your wheel straight here when the car quote-unquote lands, so you can work back to get this turn right and hook into the toe of the boot here on a tight, tidy line. Again, up the hill, I think cutting distance was a big premium on this track as we go through the climbing S's here. And then you want to get this last one particularly correct because it leads onto sort of one of the shorter straights on the track. This leads into the knuckle, which is a fast sweeping left. You're going to miss the first two apexes, hit the third, and that should give you your best exit onto this, again, one of these straights here. Your braking zone here, you're going to want to mind that. There's not much runoff into the blind hairpin. Again, an exit is key here. Get your wheel straight if you have torque over this crest. And then you're going to kind of enter this last autocross section. Again, keeping things very tight and tidy. You're not carrying any speed through here no matter what you do, so cut all the distance you can, keep it tight to the curb, and then unwind the wheel as early as possible. Use a little bit of that pit end lane if you need it to get your get an optimal run. And so that was a lap and a bit, as I can't keep up in narration because everything happens so fast. As you can see, there's still a little bit of standing water here by this point, but the track was mostly dry and that was offline. This section was particularly entertaining. You can see a little inset there, how you're just dropping off a hill and then coming around to the toe of the boot here, going up the heel of the boot, and then starting the climb back up to the level of most of the rest of the track. That's definitely a kind of an entertaining section of just you know, slightly reminiscent of like roller coaster at VIR, and I think they actually use the same name there, but not as fast, at least certainly not on the exit, but kind of similar, like winding down through some tight turns that you have to keep real tidy. But this being our quickest session was kind of fun. We'll skip ahead here, so we're going to have a little bit of fun with some of those cars that we're just coming in contact with now, without making you sort of sit through the process of catching up to them. All right, so we've tracked down the Civic on his in lap, and he's going to yield as he pits in, as he is giving the signal there. So we're going to give him plenty of room to do so as we come around here to complete this lap. And then we're going to set our sights on our friend up here in the silver Subaru that's just gone through turn 1, and we'll see what we can do with this. This is an interesting kind of vehicle dynamics comparison of a car that has lots of good power, lots of torque, lots of turbo torque from that Subaru coming out of turns, versus the sort of nimbleness of a mid-engine rear drive car carrying speed through the turns. I think I have a slight tire advantage. I think he was on RT615s, but this is the guy in the Subaru. That is his, like, I don't know his double plus backup car. It's like the backup car to the backup car. It's Astro Creep Speed Shack on YouTube. I'll leave a link in the description because he's a fellow track chaser. He's also trying to get a good number under his belt. I think I've got him by 1 or 2 tracks at this point in time. But yeah, he normally hustles around a big vintage Chevy Caprice in some state of track prep. That would probably be, I get looking at his last lap times from Pineview Run the previous year. I don't think I would have been chasing him down. It would have been about dead even. I might have had a half second on him from a PR standpoint, but in this case, it is kind of interesting to see how these both react, in where I am able to gain and where I wasn't able to gain on him in the lap, once we're kind of close enough to start really noticing here in a second. Again, kind of pitching the car through here down this hill was a real fun section. The roller coaster here is no joke. It is just that minus the rails. But yeah, so we're going to come up here to get onto the middle section here. We'll kind of get a good sense of how close we are and where we're gaining. I think I was definitely able to carry some more speed through the knuckle here. I think where you have the weakness with the all-wheel drive, with a Subaru all-wheel drive platform stock anyway, is getting the car to rotate and keeping it from pushing. So he was having to kind of fight the push into the turn, and then real slow in, fast out, where I think I was able to carry a little more speed here to get to some of these turns, and then autocross my way in here. Again, not having to fight as much understeer as he manages to point me by. But again, you see he's got that mid-range torque. That was as hard as I could pedal right there, and I wasn't really pulling on him there until he lifted for me to get past. As the car, you've seen this entire video, I have not been shifting gears, or if you haven't noticed that, then I'll point it out now that I have not been shifting gears this entire time. This is welcome to stock USDM NSX gear ratios. Second gear in my case is good for about 80 miles an hour, or as high as 80 miles an hour, and it's you know, because an NSX, you know, it does have a little bit of torque. You kind of use it down to almost parking lot speed before you need first. You know, my autocross experience, I was doing pretty much everything in second gear, because going, you know, trying to rev match into first was really never worth it. And you lose the time back during the next, you know, shifting back up. And you can see I'm getting close to the limiter a few places, but I'm never all the way on the limiter here. And I don't think I would have, you know, maybe there were a couple of situations if I was going full ham into turn one, I might hit the limiter there as I'm going through the turn, but that's the only situation I can think of. So I'm doing this all in second gear versus, I think he was in 2 gears. He was between second and third. So, you know, he's got that turbo torque, but I just don't, I'm not spending any time shifting. So there's no loss. But interesting ways of approaching it, kind of fun to, and it's also fun to, I'll give him a shout. It's always fun to see people that you kind of connected with on the internet out at the track, and then get to go and play around with them a little bit as well. Although I think it would have been more entertaining had he had his Caprice out here, and we would have been able to kind of compare lap times a little bit more closely, I think. Or and you want to talk about big car on a small track, that would have been impressive to see. We're going to come around here and finish one of our last circuits before we're going to cool it down here. Again, we've turned that 118, 1.15 was our best on the weekend, and I was pleased enough with that it was keeping most of the S2000 guys fairly honest, even on such a tight track where an S2000 is going to be, you know, they're going to be again between gears several places. But with a shorter wheelbase and more front tire proportionally speaking, whereas I'm kind of constantly fighting push in this car without getting too aggressive. But that's where we're going to cool it down for today. We thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the kind of interesting vehicle dynamics comparisons with kind of you know, how much of a difference tires really make, as well as a little bit of entertainment between a mid-engine rear drive and an all-wheel drive front-engine turbo car on this last session. And hopefully you've come away with some decent points of reference if you decide to visit Pineview Run yourself. Again, if you'd like to learn more about the track, check out our track feature from a kind of facility standpoint. And you'll have a card to that above and a link in the description down below. And if you'd like to help support, as many of you know, this is kind of the, you know, I'm recording this on Halloween, and it's a little bit of the day of the, you know, the driving dead, as the NSX is currently down with rod knock and needing more than likely a rebuild. So if you'd like to support that effort, it's going to happen either way, but if you'd like to be a part of it, check out our Patreon. I left a link in the description. And you can, in our Patreon, you can actually get a little bit of more. We've finally found a place, I think, where we can post stuff that's kind of just the general behind-the-scenes things that they hit the cutting room floor, or, you know, goofy pictures we'll take in advance that don't make sense for the narrative of the track feature videos. They don't make sense for the Just the Laps videos, and they're not kind of as a standalone worthwhile for Instagram. But hey, even some for various levels of membership, we also even have like outtakes, because as much as it may sound or hopefully looks in production like we've done this all in one take, or whatever, that is definitely not always the case. So we figure give you guys kind of a look behind the scenes there. But without pimping that too hard, I think we're going to call it there. I do thank you for watching, and just your support and your viewership is amazing. And we will be on to the next one here soon. So again, if you're not subscribed, click the button, smash the bell, do all those things, and then that way you will be notified when we are next able to get out into the world and check another racetrack off of our list. We do have lots of content coming, even though the NSX is MIA. So look forward to that, and until next time, I'm Richard, this is Lap of the World, and we'll see you in the next video, if not at the track.